Today we're going to discuss characteristics of living things. So how do you know that something is alive? I want you to take a moment and think about how you can look at all living things on the planet and what characteristics do they all share. Now, if while you were thinking you have breathing on your list, breathing is not a characteristic of living things. You need to think past the animal aspect of the living things. We are animals, we breathe, but if you think about all of the other kingdoms, plants do not breathe, bacteria does not breathe, fungus does not breathe, and neither do protists. So breathing is not one of the characteristics. We're going to discuss the characteristics that all living things share. The first being that all living things are made of cells. You've talked about cells in several of the other biology classes that you've had through the years. This should look like a familiar picture to you. We are going to spend time this year reviewing all of the different parts of a cell. So don't worry if this looks scary. Cells are the basic building blocks of all living things. They perform all of the functions of life. And as we just said, all living things are made up of cells. There are two main types of cells. We have prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. Now, prokaryotic cells are the very simple cells. They have no nucleus or membrane-bound organelles. They are unicellular and they are only found in the bacteria kingdom. Bacteria are the only prokaryotic cells that there are. Eukaryotic are the type of cells that you would find in protists, fungi, animals, or plants. I always like to remember that you are complex, you are an animal, therefore you are eukaryotic. It's an easy way to remember it. The eukaryotic cells are complex cells. They contain a nucleus and membrane-bound organelles, and they can be found in unicellular and multicellular organisms. The two types of eukaryotic cells that we are going to discuss this year are animal and plant cells. The major differences between the animal and plant cells are that animals do not contain a cell wall, they do not have a chloroplast, they have a round shape, the centrioles are present. Centrioles are used in cell division. We will talk about that later on, also in the year. Animal cells have many lysosomes, and they have a small vacuole, usually many small vacuoles. Plant cells have a cell wall and a chloroplast. A chloroplast is the site of photosynthesis. Now, animals do not need to do photosynthesis, therefore they don't need chloroplasts. Plant cells also have a rectangular shape. They have no centrioles present. They have fewer lysosomes. And because they need to do photosynthesis, they have a large vacuole. Vacuoles hold the water and other materials necessary for photosynthesis. So plants require a large vacuole. Unicellular and multicellular. These are two vocab words that you should remember. Unicellular means one cell, and multicellular are many cells. And if you are a many-celled organism, a multicellular organism, your cells group together and they specialize so that each group of cells has a special job to help the organism function. Next characteristic of living things are that all living things reproduce. Now we have two types of reproduction. We have sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. Asexual involves one parent. The offspring are genetically identical to the parent. Now, sexual reproduction requires two parents. The offspring are genetically diverse, meaning that the offspring are a combination of the genes from the two parents. So they're a different combination than the parents. They're a mix. All organisms, all living things, adjust to their surroundings. Now, the main term for this is homeostasis. This term will come back many times throughout the year. It means to maintain internal control or balance. So we are able to maintain our body temperature at a 98.6 degrees. Even if it's 100 degrees outside or -10 outside, we can still maintain a 98.6 degree temperature because we are using homeostasis. Now, we are going to talk in detail about positive and negative feedback loops because this is what helps to maintain the control. We will do that at a later time. All living things grow and develop. Growth means to increase in size, and development is changes that happen as you grow or to become more complex. So growing would be like you getting taller than you were last year. Development would mean more like puberty. So you are changing. Parts of your body are changing as you grow. You are becoming more complex. All living things have a complex chemistry. We are going to spend a lot of time this year on biochemistry. All living things are made up of 4 main macromolecules, along with other elements, but the 4 main molecules that are common to all living things are lipids, carbohydrates, nucleic acids, and proteins, and they are all carbon-based. We will, again, spend lots of time on this later. All living things can convert energy to food or convert food to energy. Main source of energy of all living things on the planet is the sun. Now, the sun helps with photosynthesis. The sun is necessary for plants to make their own food. Now, a producer is an organism that makes its own food by using photosynthesis. So plants, some bacteria, and some protists are photosynthetic organisms. A consumer must take in food to survive. Animals, fungi, and some protists are considered consumers. Now, you may think, well, I don't need sun. I don't need to use photosynthesis. But you need to remember that plants are a major part of the food web. We need to eat the organisms, the plants, or the organisms that eat the plants. If plants were missing from the food web, there would be a real problem on the planet. Now, as a closing part, we're starting biology for the year. There are 4 unifying principles of biology that we are going to cover this whole year. The entire course is based on these 4 unifying principles. The first being the cell theory. So we already determined that all living things are made up of cells. And cells are the basic unit of life. Now, all cells also come from other living cells. Those are the 3 main parts of the cell theory. Not too bad to remember. A second one, unifying principle, is the gene theory. Now, genes determine the characteristics of living things. They are located on chromosomes that are found in every cell of every organism. Genes are passed on from parents to offspring. We also have homeostasis. Homeostasis means to keep internal conditions constant even though the external environment is changing. Now, homeostasis is a characteristic of living things. It also is one of the unifying principles. Homeostasis involves many processes, and we are going to spend a lot of time discussing those processes this year. Now, the last unifying principle is evolution. The process of evolution occurs by natural selection. Now, most of the time you'll hear it's survival of the fittest. Now, it doesn't matter that they survive. They must survive and be able to pass their genes on to another generation. So they have to survive and reproduce. Otherwise, there's no point because the organism cannot adapt without passing those genes on to the next generation. So we are going to spend a lot of time on evolution towards the end of the year.